Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, helping you navigate home care and senior residences.
Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Del Vecchio here, specializing in home care, elder care planning, and the senior living industry. Thank you for tuning in here on a Sunday. Do you know that there are approximately 750,000 Canadians that are living with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia? And that number is growing at a rapid pace, and the care of people with dementia in seniors' homes has come under scrutiny, especially since the pandemic. We've heard it all over the media since the pandemic, but I will say that after being in dozens and dozens of these residences in both the public and private sector over the last couple of years, I can say that care is improving. As a society, we still need to do a much better job, but we're heading in the right direction, and there are encouraging signs. And there are new up-and-coming organizations that are taking dementia care to the next level in senior living communities, and I'm very pleased to have Eve Lachapelle. Eve is the Director of Care at Lianas Residence, and Eve joins me in studio. Eve, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much. Director of Care of Lianas Residence. We're going to talk a little bit more about Lianas. You've only been open for about a year, I think, in Montreal,
yes,
but very much part of a bigger organization. But I do want to talk about some of the challenges with dementia, and it's not easy being a caregiver to someone with dementia. So what are some of the challenges that our caregivers are facing?
One of the biggest challenges that caregivers have is it's around physical and mental well-being. It's very difficult for them at some point. It's a selfless act to care for another person. So this often leads to a sacrifice of their own well-being, physical, mental, and financial. So striking a balance between caring for the loved one and taking care of oneself become a real struggle. So many caregiver feels guilty about dedicating time for the personal well-being also.
You bring up some very, very important points. We've had Claire Webster on Life Unrehearsed, a real caregiver advocate, especially for those with dementia, talking a lot of similar points as you. Self-care, there's the guilt, there's the sacrifice, and not easy being a caregiver in general, even more difficult being a caregiver with someone with dementia. Now, what is encouraging, and we've seen some advancements in Europe and the Netherlands with senior living communities, and it's slowly trickling into Canada and right here in Montreal. So what are some of the advancements in dementia care regarding residences specializing in memory care?
So the focus of the care has changed for a more structured place to a more put on occupational of the patient, of the resident, what he's doing, where he's capable of doing. So if making a bed, for example, it's not quite right, but we're going to encourage them to do so. And it's also, we're considering the person as a whole. We are adapting our care to their individual need versus what we need as a structure place.
It's a very interesting point there, because sometimes you got to fit it into that cookie cutter care program, and as a director of care, it's a role reversal. You're adapting to their needs, which is so crucial in trying to make their quality of life as good as possible. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Del Vecchio here, and I'm talking to Eve Lachapelle, the Director of Care at Lianas Residence. And, you know, one of the challenges, Eve, that I certainly see in my world as well as you, it's never easy to make the decision to transition a loved one into a residence. We see a lot of people wanting to stay at home as long as possible, which is completely normal. At what point, though, does it make sense to consider a potential transition?
Well, it's never an easy decision, right? So when the burden becomes greater than the benefit, we need to consider the transition, because if we can, as a caregiver, no longer provide care and the well-being of the loved one is at risk, transitioning to specialized memory care center become essential.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think part of the issue too, and I talk a lot about it in Life Unrehearsed. I was on the Andrew Carter show this week, actually. The healthcare system is there. Government, I think, is trying to do their best, but it's not getting better in the public system. It's getting difficult. Waiting times to get into a public CHSLD, waiting times just to get home care at home. This would solve a lot of the problems if we could support loved ones at home. But unfortunately, waiting lists are increasing, doubled in the last 3 to 4 years. And so it's encouraging to hear that there are starting to be some alternative options, because
Yes.
it's not easy to transition. It's gut wrenching for caregivers, and sometimes, and in many times, there's actually a feel good story after it's done. It just takes a while to get
Yes.
there. So I'd like to hear. Selena's new to Montreal, and although you are from Quebec City, you've been doing things that Montrealers are saying, "Wow, that's what they're doing in the Netherlands," and now it's here in Montreal. You're based in Westmount. What, when I say you're doing things differently, what would differentiate Selena from other traditional residences?
Yes, so Selena prioritized the person, like respecting their choices, their individuality, and their tastes. So our approach involved embracing old and even new habits. We place the need and decision of the person first. So it might be challenges, I think, for some to understand the importance we place on respecting personal choices. Um, for some example, like wearing multiple layers, this does not make sense. But as a caregiver, we're like, no, it needs to be one shirt, one pair of pants. But we change things by saying, well, is the person showing sign of distress? Is he happy? Is he comfortable? And at Selena, what we do differently is we're just not medical personnel. We're also teacher, and we help the family. We educate the family and friends about the behavior associated with memory disorder, and we support them in their own journey dealing with those behavior.
Listen to Life Unrehearsed with Eve Lachapelle, Director of Care at Selena Residence. I've actually been in Selena, very impressed with it. Well, a couple things that stood out for me is little things like, especially in wintertime, when say a daughter or a son or a family member are visiting their mom or dad, when you have to change your winter clothes, your jacket and your boots, you're actually not doing that in the room of their mom or dad, because they will usually relate that to they're leaving or it's a stress for them. So you have a separate area, right? Even for
Absolutely. When you go home, when you're at home, do you bring your boots and your coat in the middle of the living room? No. So you're coming in the house of your family member, of your loved one that is at Selena. So you have a specific space. So you get undressed and you go in and you enjoy your loved one in their home.
it's amazing. I think even at nighttime, if I'm not mistaken, some of the employees and the PABs are even in their pajamas. Is that right?
Absolutely. So it's the probably the only place it's okay to wear pajamas at night when you work, but it's to encourage the residents to see that it's nighttime and we have a routine and everyone is in their pajamas and like home.
Very interesting. Makes a lot of sense. All right. And I guess what would be some of the benefits to the caregiver if their loved one makes the transition to an appropriate senior living community like Selene and other good residents as well for memory care? It's very stressful, like we talked about.
Absolutely.
Again, the guilt and it's certainly, we can't sugarcoat it. The first few weeks are challenging, and we need a
Yeah.
good support. But once the dust settles and the staff gets accompanied to the individual gets accompanied to the staff. What are you seeing some of the benefits for even caregivers?
So there's they return back to their role as a kid, like it's their children. They're not taking the role of parents towards their loved ones. So they're just enjoying their family member, getting outside, getting to the restaurant, having coffee, and they also see how beneficial the activities on a daily basis with the food, the leisure team, so how they can bring much joy and the community. So some were basically at home alone, not talking to other person, and now they have a community of person. The conversation does not always make sense, but they can talk around and having people surrounding them.
Well, that's really good to hear, and I want to emphasize to our listeners, we as a society, we still have a long ways to go. It's
Yeah.
very encouraging to see organizations like Selena Residence. I've seen some even public residences that are heading in the right direction, right
Yes.
here in Montreal, specializing in dementia care. Some of the new builds that are being done, we need a lot more of them, but this is taking into consideration the customized needs of the individual that require dementia care. Ev, I
Yes.
want to thank you very much for coming into studio here on a Sunday here in Life Unrehearsed. How could our listeners listeners find out a little bit more about Selena Residence?
It's going to be on the website at residenceselena.com. So all the information is on there.
Great website, by the way, phone numbers and resources. So it's Residence Selena, SELENA.com. Eve, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Eve Lachapelle, Director of Care at Selena Residence.